Hello, good evening. Happy Tuesday evening. You are watching Live with Gotham Quilts, and we are not live. We're doing another pre-recorded one. It is the season of holiday parties, and so we've got a little bit of a conflict. So we're coming to you pre-recorded. But whether you are watching us live or whether you are watching us on the replay, hello, welcome. I'm Allison, and behind the camera making all the magic happen is producer Ken, and we are with Gotham Quilts. Today we've got a really exciting topic and project for you. We're doing double duty on today's Live with Gotham Quilts. We are talking all about selvages. Now, let's just settle the age-old question. Is it selvage, AGE, or selvage, EDGE? The answer is they're both right. This is another one of those things where Americans have one spelling and the Brits have another spelling. I bet you could guess which one is which. I feel like British, I hope I'm not offending anyone on the internet generally, but I think they have some extra letters. They have more letters than we do in America. So actually both are correct. But if you are looking at anything from American companies, you're probably going to see it spelled Selvage. But I'm glad we were able to settle that age-old argument. Both are technically correct. Yeah. So now that we've got the spelling out of the way, let's talk about what they are. So selvages, if you've had any kind of fabric, whether it is quilting cotton, canvases, garment making, wide backs, any kind of fabric by the virtue of how it's made is going to have two denser woven edges. And what that does is it kind of holds the fabric together as it's being woven. And it's just a process of how it's made. Now, in quilting cotton specifically, we use these selvages for a couple of different things. They serve a number of purposes for both us in quilt shops and also consumers who buy these fabrics. Now, the first number one thing that we use our selvages for is, you can see this is a great example of this, is it identifies a number of things about this particular fabric. So let's talk about the things that you are probably going to see in any selvage, especially when you're talking about quilting cotton. So over here, I've got the fabric line name. This is cut from a fabric line called 321 Blast Off. You are also very often going to see the designer's name. So this is Stacy E. Shoe. Does a lot of really adorable, I would say it leans a little towards the children's fabric, but in a very modern and cool way. So if you are not familiar with Stacy E. Shoe as a designer, I recommend that you get familiar. The other thing it's going to tell me is where the manufacturer of this fabric. So here we've got this fabric came from Moda. Stacy is a designer for Moda. Down here, you can see this is an Art Gallery solid selvage. And so I can see that it comes from Art Gallery fabric. All of these pieces of information are going to help me find this fabric. If I need to find more of this particular print, for example, or if I need to find more fabrics in this line, I really love this fabric. Let's see what else is out there in this collection. There could be some contact information for the manufacturer or the designer. It could very well give you some information about what this is made up of. I've seen that sometimes. We've got 100% cotton. Not always do I see the makeup of the fabric, but sometimes we do see that. Here's the other piece. It's not very flashy, it's not very sexy, but it is probably the best way to help you find what this particular fabric is. So with this piece of information, I can see that this is from 321 Blast Off, Stacy E. Shoe, and then the piece that is going to be the most helpful is this stock or SKU number here. And so this is probably pretty tiny to see on your screen, but this one says 29050. What that tells me it tells the internet, what it tells whoever has this fabric is that this particular print of fabric is item number 20950. And so if you are looking for something, this is a great way to put that into the Google machine, or to go to your local quilt store to say, I'd like some more of this particular fabric. Now, here's the one caveat with that particular number is that will only give me this print. It'll give me the rockets with the Saturn and the stars. What designers do a lot of times is they will do the same print in a number of different colorways. So that's the piece that's generally missing from this selvage. The reason being is a lot of fabric is still screen printed. And so each different color on a particular fabric is going to have a different screen to print that. Now, if you're familiar with screen printing, you basically put your fabric down, you have a silk screen where there is some relief where the ink can go through, you squeegee the ink across, and that is how you get prints. Now, in fabric, it's kind of a fascinating thing because those screens need to be 45 inches wide or so, and all of those screens are going to have this information on there. The reason that you don't often see the color number on here is because then you would need to make a separate screen for each color as opposed to a separate screen for each design, each print here. So that would just add a whole lot of cost and a whole lot of extra work to making fabric where it wouldn't really necessarily get you a whole lot. Generally speaking, if you find print number 20950 with these rocket ships and the Saturn and the stars, you could probably pretty easy figure out what color you have. There'll be a blue and there'll be a red and there might be a turquoise. Those are the easy pieces to tell. But especially if you're looking for something that's out of print, a little older, that number is going to be your friend. The other piece of the selvage that is going to be your best friend, I might argue, are these little dots. As I had mentioned, fabric a lot of times is still screen printed. And so each of these is going to be a color of ink that is used on this particular fabric. So you can see in this one, I've got all of these little they're shaped like little rocket ships. And that's what's kind of fun about designers nowadays is they are getting really cute and fun with their selvages. And so instead of just a plain circle, we've got these little rocket ships. So that is, I guess, tip number 2, if you are ever looking for fabric to match this particular one. Sometimes it can be kind of hard to see, to pull out certain fabrics, especially maybe when you're getting a little bit distracted by all that's going on in the print. You can always just use these little dots at the bottom, and you know that these are going to be the colors or the base colors of the fabric here. So if you find something that matches these colors, dollars to donut, it's going to look really great in your project. So selvages are generally all going to have that kind of information on there. This one, art gallery, one of the reasons that we love art gallery part is because of their feel, but art gallery solids have this really cool little feature in that they are just a solid fabric, and so you don't have to worry about having a whole bunch of different screens, and so they actually print the color name on here of their solids. And so you can see this one is number 433 in the color snow. So that is also very helpful if you are ever looking for that. So for all of those reasons, selvages really can be worth their weight in gold. So when you'll have to let me know in the comments here. Again, whether you are watching the replay or watching us live, here's what I'm dying to know. I'm hopeful that I might change your mind, but before, when you started watching this video, are you team save your selvages or are you team scrap them? So you'll have to let me know what you did before. When you are saving your selvages, one of the things that I might recommend is to have an extra inch. This one, I think I cut it, let's see what I cut it at. I cut this at 2.5 inches because I knew I wanted to make some really cool selvage projects, and stay tuned because we've got a great one for you with the free pattern. But really, depending on what you're doing with your selvage, this might be a little bit more than you need. And keep in mind, when you cut your selvages, you're taking away from your usable fabric. Now, the great news is that most pattern designers are going to write their patterns and their cutting instructions, assuming a 40-inch width of fabric. A lot of times we get 44, 45 inches. And so you might have a little bit extra to work with. So here's what I would recommend is when you're working on your next project, cut your fabric, make sure you have enough fabric for your main project, but don't cut that selvage off right away. The more fabric that you have attached to it, the better off you'll be and the more flexible you can be with your project. So do consider saving your selvages going forward. Now, I told you all the cool things about selvages. There are a couple of exceptions to this rule. And one of them, I'm going to show you right here. We'll go to the overhead and I will show you how this one is different. But one of the major exceptions to this of a selvage being just kind of a wealth of information is a batik. And you can see here, I've got this beautiful stripy batik by Riley Blake. I've got my selvage at the end. And look at this. It's a little bit more dense, so I wouldn't use it in a project necessarily, but it really is only about a half an inch, and there is no information on there about what this fabric is, who the manufacturer is, or where it's coming from. So if you are getting a batik and you think you might need to go back to the well to get some more of that fabric, you might want to either keep some information about what you bought it, where you bought it from, who the manufacturer is, or take a picture of the top of the bolt, and that will give you the information that you need. So batiks are one of the main exceptions to some of that information that we find so helpful in the selvages. Another exception is digital prints. Now, I showed you all those great things that are available on screen printing with the color dots that you can use to match. This print is just way too complex to be done by screen printing. And so this is a digital print. And so you can see here that I still have some good information on the selvage. I know the manufacturer of this. This looks like it's just a general design, maybe their in-house design team. So there's no specific name here. And I still do have this great piece of information that tells me what this fabric name is, so I can help myself find it later if I needed to. But what I'm missing, the dots, the registration dots, because this is digitally printed. You just don't need it. So those are a couple of things to just be wary of, that not all selvages are the same. And sometimes you get more or less information depending on what kind of fabric you have. Now, I promised you a project, and we're going to go into the making of this. But if you're going to save your selvages, what can you do with it? You can do a number of things. This is just one idea. And so you can see here, I've got these spools of fabric. I took selvages in colors that were in a very similar family. So here I've got my purple spool, and I just lined up my selvages and did that. Now, the great thing about this is if you want to sew with your selvages, the process that we use to make this pillow is pretty much the same. That's what you're going to do for any kind of your projects. You could make a bag. You could make clothing. I saw a dress the other day made of selvages. You could make a quilt. Really, when you put this all together and you kind of look at it from afar, it looks like a fun kind of funky stripe. And so you can make your own stripe for whatever it is. Now, no matter what you're doing, whether you're going to make a pillow or a quilt or a bag, you're going to basically start the same way. And that is, you are going to sew your selvages to a foundation piece of paper. And I've got a foundation piece of fabric. Too much foundation paper piecing on the brain, I guess. So we've got a closer up video that will go ahead and get started here. And I'll walk you through some of the things that you need to know as you are considering this. So the first thing you're going to do is start with a foundation piece of fabric. And you'll want something that's on the lighter side. In this video and in my sample, I use the Art Gallery Pure Solids in Snow. I want something that is a light, neutral color that's not going to interfere or compete with my selvages. And I also want it to be kind of light and flowy, which is why I chose the Art Gallery solids. Now, there are some other solids out there that are really great for sewing. They've got a little bit more heft to it. Those are not the ones that you will want to use for this project. So then the next thing you'll do is line up your selvage, and you will just sew the bottom of it to your foundation fabric. And here what I'm doing is I'm holding the threads or the tails of my thread, because here's going to be another tip for you when you're sewing with selvages. Because there are so many different colors involved, I really like using an invisible thread for this. And there are a couple of different brands. We carry both Aurifil and Gutermann. I'd say they both work very, very well for this particular project. And so using that invisible thread helps, but it is a little wiry and it is very invisible. So I don't want to lose my tails, which is why I held them when I began to sew. So I sewed the first one down. I'm going to line the next one up with as much of the previous selvage as I want to look at. The other piece with this is you can have it as straight or as wonky and funky as you care to have. In this particular project, it's meant to replicate the threads of a spool. And so I have them a little bit off to one side, a little jaunty. And so you get to choose based on your project if you want nice, straight stripes or selvages, or if you want it to be just a little bit jaunty. The other piece that I'm pointing out here is that you will want to make sure that your next selvage overlaps the top of your bottom, your lower selvage. What you're doing is with each subsequent row, you are encasing the one below it with your stitching line. And so for these ones, I had plenty of room to sew, and so it really wasn't a concern for me. But do make sure as you're sewing your next selvage that you are catching at least the top edge of your bottom one. I did not bother to go back and cut any extra like you would in foundation paper piecing, where you cut it so you have an even seam allowance. I just kept all of that fabric there. And the other piece is when you get to the very, very top of your foundation, you don't need to sew that top piece. That will be encased in when you stitch your piece. So this is going to be the same process whether you are sewing a little piece like this as you would for the spool of thread, where I just need a couple inches by a couple inches. You could also do this same process if you were sewing something larger, if you wanted to make one big sheet of selvage fabric and then cut that down into squares, rectangles, whatever you want to do for your project. It's the exact same process. It's just the size of the fabric and the size of the selvages that would be different. So then once you've got your fabric the size that you want to, then you would cut it down to size just like you would any piece of fabric. I am at this point treating this like it's one piece of fabric. I'm ignoring the fact that it's got these selvages on it. But for the fact that when you trim it, what you'll want to do is just make sure that you've got all the prettiest pieces of the selvage where you want them. So I'm going to trim this face up. I know that I'm only overhanging a little bit, and I know that I need a piece that's much smaller than this. So as long as I catch all of my foundation fabric in my trimming, I'm good to go. And so that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to trim it face up to whatever the size says in your pattern. The other piece is I'm going to make sure that I get the top of my foundation fabric here. The trick is that when you are sewing this, you really want to make sure that you've got your foundation fabric to sew to. But like I said, there's not much overhang here, and so I'm not super worried about that. The other piece when you are sewing these together is a lot of times selvages will have kind of a fuzzy edge at the bottom here. And so when you're sewing, you want to make sure to catch the actual woven area of your fabric, and that you're not just sewing on those fuzzy threads, because that you're just asking for your selvage fabric to come loose. And so we do have an image, a really super close-up image of exactly where I'm sewing. And so on this particular fabric, there happens to be a woven line on the selvage, and you can see it going down. It's the blue line right in the middle of the screen with the white selvage on either side. I'm going to sew pretty close to that line because I want to make sure, again, to get all that woven area. If you look at where my needle is, you can see it is just to the right of the fluffy edge and probably very close to right on where that dark line is. Now, not every selvage is going to have that dark line, and that is quite all right. Just make sure that you're catching the actual fabric and not just that fuzzy bits when you are sewing it. So when we are talking about this particular project, really this is the trickiest bit, is making your spool fabric. Now, you can download the pattern for this whole project. We'll give you instructions on how to make your colorful spools, as well as how to add your spool top and bottom to it, and how to put them together in a pillow like this with an envelope back. Now, like I say, making your fabric, your selvage fabric, is probably the trickiest part here, and you saw how easy that was. The rest of it is just rectangles, half square triangles, and a little bit of border all around the end. We will have instructions on how to turn yours into a pillow, which I did here. And of course, I can't have a selvage pillow without using my Selvage Magic fabric from Ruby Star. We also have this on the Gotham website. So pick up your pattern for the selvage spool. It's a free PDF pattern. Just go ahead and download that, and you will be using your selvages to keep your memories with you all the time. How fun would that be to look at that and say, I remember when I used that in a quilt, or that was the quilt I gave to my niece when she got married, those kinds of things. It's a great way to keep those memories alive. So with that, I thank you so much for joining us for our All About Selvages show. I hope you learned something. Go ahead and put it in the comments if this was all new to you, if you knew all of it from before, or maybe there's a couple things you knew and it added to what you already had in your repertoire. We'll actually go ahead and transition to the housekeeping things. Our January Thread Talk is now live. This is David Owen Hastings, and I am so excited for this talk. This is 10 modern masterpieces. And what I love about this is it is a lecture all about 10 beautiful modern quilts and the artists behind them. And so it'll be a really interesting talk by a really interesting guy. Do register at that link. Keep in mind that Club Gotham members do get free entrance to all of the Thread Talks. So this will be a good one to sign up for. That is going to be on the first Wednesday of January. So that's Wednesday, January 7th. It's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We also have some seats remaining in our Color for Quilters class. Remember, this is a virtual exploration of of colors specifically for quilters. It's like a very focused, fun, very productive, and like I say, very focused towards quilters color theory class. If you have ever been a little scared of picking fabrics, or you weren't really sure, did this go with that, or why is everything in my fabric stash blue, those kinds of things, this Color for Quilters class is for you. It is a year-long exploration, just broken down into bite-sized chunks. And so you are going to be learning a little bit each month. And it's very practical, very hands-on. You will be doing some sewing. You will be looking through your stash and finding colors and fabrics that go together. We're going to go all the way from warm versus cool and how those fit together, all the way to picking out different sizes and values of fabric, of prints on fabric, and making sure that everything goes together cohesively. And then last but not least, I do want to remind you that we are still accepting signups for our collage quilting. Collage quilting has been a little bit of a passion of ours here. It is super fun and very artistic. What I love about it is it's less precise than some of the piecing that we do. And so it's a really good break. Our Color for Quilters, our collage quilting virtual retreat is March 20th through the 22nd. You'll get a lovely lovely little retreat package along with a book. And we're going to go through 2 different schools of thoughts on collage quilting. And so you get to pick and work in what's your favorite. The idea is with that retreat package, we give you what you need to get started. You might just need to have some your stash, some scraps in your stash, a good pair of scissors, and a stiletto. Everything else we'll either give to you or is completely optional. So we hope to see you at the Collage Quilters virtual retreat, again, March 20th through 22nd. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time. Next week, we will actually be live. That's going to be next Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel. That's going to be 6:30, and we hope to find you here or there. But either way, we hope to find you. So thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.